I look at where Nokia is today. It's no longer the biggest mobile phone brand in the world. It's barely even an ingredient brand in Microsoft at this stage. And I think about how I could have spent that money differently. Could I have spent it in a way that helped Nokia future-proof itself? Could I have spent it in a way that actually had some societal impact as well? That was part of the journey that brought me here to speak to you today. This quest to find a more meaningful way of practicing our craft of marketing as well. Years passed and I tried to push this empty feeling away by working even harder. I reached for the next promotion, reached for a bigger paycheck, and then after several years I became a father to this guy. This is my son, Nuri. He is sporting a rather amazing case of bedhead here. And one day I was going out the door on a business trip, and he said something to me. He said, "See you next week, Dada." And the way he said it, in such a matter-of-fact way, it kind of broke my heart. Like he'd gotten used to me going away for so long that it meant nothing to him. And a week was a rather long time in his life. "See you next week, Dada." And I thought about it on this trip. And when I got home, I felt so guilty. I did what all guilty dads do. I took him to the park so we could just have some father-son time. Now, given that this park was February in New York City, this may have been a terrible idea. The park was bitterly cold. There was like black garbage bags just floating around in the wind. And there's nobody at the park, and Nuri is so bored, he's just pushing his own stroller around the perimeter of the park. Like, it's not good parenting skills. Anyway, we're sitting there on this park bench, and I turned to him and go, "Hey, I'm really sorry I had to go away for so long. I really missed you." And he said, "That's okay, Dada. I missed you. I know your work is important." And then we sat there in silence for a moment, and then he turned to me and said, "So what do you do?" And in that moment, that emptiness came back. My throat was frozen, like the park around us. I couldn't get any words to come out of my mouth. And I realized I didn't have a good answer for him. I realized I didn't know how to tell that little boy that I'd missed a week of his life just so I could help people buy more stuff. I felt guilt. I felt shame. I wanted to cry, but I didn't want him to see me cry. And so all I could do in that moment was just give him a big hug. But inside me, I vowed that something had to change. A few weeks later, I'm hanging out with my friend Jeff Benjamin. Now, Jeff is one of the most awarded creative directors in advertising, so I thought he could help me figure some of this stuff out. And we get to Jeff's place, and he's watching this movie, Deep Impact. Do you guys know this movie? It is one of those cheesy 90s movies where Morgan Freeman is the president of the United States, and it's about this giant asteroid hitting the Earth. And Jeff and I are sitting there watching this movie, and there's a scene where they put the best minds of a generation into this mountain shelter, right? And they're putting in doctors and engineers and scientists and teachers to protect them from the effects of the asteroid. And Jeff turns to me and says, "Hey, Af, you know who they're not putting in that mountain?" Marketers. I thought to myself, he's right. And I imagined myself like going through the crowds and going up to the top of the mountain and seeing the guy with the clipboard standing there checking people off. Name? Afdhel Aziz. Profession? Marketing. Why should you be in this mountain? I throw really good parties. I think the secret is we all want to do work that gets us into the mountain. So I decided to go and try and find some people who did that. The next day, I was at work. I cleared my schedule. I was sitting in this little phone booth, wondering where to start. And so I did what all self-respecting marketers do. I went on Google. And the first question I asked myself was, am I alone? Am I the only person who thinks that what they do is fundamentally not as meaningful as it should be. And I found this survey from Gallup. Gallup did a poll of 140 countries, and they asked people to say, are you happy and engaged at work? And I want you guys to shout out what percentage you think said yes. Loud, I can't hear you guys. 20? 45? 12? Anything higher than 45? 15%. 15% of people said, yes, I'm fulfilled and engaged at work. That's 85% of people who said, no, I'm not. All right, now it's time for some audience participation. In a second, if you feel like you're part of the 85%, I want you to stand up. I'm just kidding, I wouldn't do that to you. This guy over here was freaking out, by the way. Like, it was like 85% did not like what they do. Gallup called it a shocking waste of talent, and I agree. So I asked myself a second question. What do those 15% of people have in common? And here's the answer I found. These three things. So this is from Dan Pink, an amazing book called Drive, The Science of What Motivates Us. It's these three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So we're going to talk about each of these in turn.